What's up, you guys? UFO Proof here, and today we're going to be discussing the Tomb of Osiris, the God King. Osiris, Lord of the Dead, the foremost of Westerners, he who is permanently benign and youthful, God of the afterlife. People call him by many different names, but the one thing we don't call him is real. Today, we consider him only a myth, but what did the ancient Egyptians consider him? The first pharaoh? From the first time, called Zeptepi, a time before Egypt existed, this god king descended from the stars and taught man the knowledge of civilization, and ruled over the humans that worshipped him. In fact, the entire Egyptian culture is a copy of his style. All pharaohs attempted to mimic his look, the crown, the beard, the crook and flail, and so on. The only thing they couldn't copy was his dark green skin. Retold is the story of Osiris. The first day, a fake battle takes place. Osiris is killed. The second day, the procession would take his body on the Nile to his tomb. The third day, he is mourned and his enemies are destroyed. The fourth day, prayers and vigils are held. The fifth day, he is resurrected. So what can we take from this? Well, I would think it would be the details. It seems awfully specific for a pure myth. But probably most interesting part of his tomb, why does he even have a tomb? No other gods have a tomb. Tell me, have you ever heard of the tomb of Ra? Or the tomb of Anubis? Maybe the tomb of Horus? No, of course not. Because these places cannot be explained through standard chronology of Egypt, they resort to the last weapon of defense, myths, symbols, or magic. But let's look at the evidence first. We have the Osirion in Abydos. Once believed to be from Seti I, most people and Egyptologists realized this would be impossible. The Osirion is over 5 meters deeper than the surrounding temples, but was an above-ground temple when it was built. And it's constructed of perfectly smooth megalithic-size blocks of rose granite. There are no other temples made with that style or material, besides the fact that the Osirion is below the water level in the ground, meaning it is forever flooded. Every season, it fills with water and must be pumped out continuously, which I could see causing a problem for anyone cutting and lifting 20-ton blocks of granite into place with absolute perfection. Also, Seti I clearly states he was renovating the Osirion, not building it. So that would mean it was already there, buried for thousands of years, at a time before the water table reached it. But this place does not contain any hieroglyphs anywhere, nor does it contain a sarcophagus. But there is another place called the Tomb of Osiris, and its mysteries are even more baffling. It's located under the Temple of the Sphinx. Not the Sphinx itself, but close enough to be of significance. And so when people want to talk about impossible construction, stuff like the Great Pyramid or Pumapunku, neither one of those have anything on the Tomb of Osiris. This is one of the most enigmatic places you could possibly imagine. It seems impossibly hard. It doesn't even seem like it's not only possible, it doesn't even seem plausible. But this is what they did. They started with this shaft up top, cut out 20 feet straight down, then turned off to the side, went out another 40 feet, then cut another trough straight down 40 more feet to a staging room where it had 6 hollows filled with sarcophagi. Solid granite sarcophagi, by the way, not alabaster or anything. Then another shaft cut straight down takes them to 90 feet under the earth into the Tomb of Osiris, where his sarcophagus sits in the middle of a pool of water surrounded by 4 pillars at each corner, marked with weird hieroglyphs. And the sarcophagus is 12 feet long. Or excuse me, it's 9 feet long and 12 tons. So how the hell did they get all 7 of those down there? They said what they would do is they cut out side shafts at the very bottom chamber. Even though they don't have any proof of this. This is what they say. They cut out side shafts from the chamber. And then they went back to the top after they cut everything out. And they filled the whole thing up with sand. Then they came in from the side and took buckets of sand out. And that would lower a sarcophagus up on top. After you moving of the sand, scoop by scoop, it would slowly come down all the way down. That's what they believe. And I'm going to tell you straight up, you're wrong. It wouldn't work. One, because look at the angles on everything. All right? I mean, look how far back the rooms go. You could be pulling out sand from the bottom chamber to the point where no more sand would be falling from the chamber above it. So it wouldn't do you any good. It could dump out first and wouldn't not move anything. And how does it go from the second chamber down to the third chamber? How does it make that corner, that move? Someone's got to be down there with it, right? I mean, come on, that's the most ridiculous theory. But they just yeah, sure, that seems simple, sounds simple enough. So that's got to work. It's like you can't put any kind of a fucking thought into it. Now I'll tell you what, I have put a thought into it, and I still don't have a fucking clue. What do you guys think? How is this done? Remember, these sarcophagi are anywhere between 15 and 24 tons, solid granite. So how would you do that? And another thing is that the tunnels are barely big enough for the sarcophagus to fit down in. There's barely any room around them. I mean, the big ones in the second chamber are really big. They're really wide, and I don't even think they could get down to the third chamber. I mean, is that crazy or what? And then they're like, oh yeah, and then people would come and worship here. Really? Bullshit. It was made in a design so you couldn't just come and go as you pleased. So how did they even worship it? It was completely underground. I mean, are they suggesting that this was open the whole time, that they could just go down there and pray in front of it or something? It's meant to be hard to get in there. And I mean, you're 100 feet underground, 3 different chambers to get all the way down there to worship at the feet of Osiris. That doesn't exist. It's not actually there. Does that make any sense? Now, what else is interesting is if you take a look at the lid here, does it remind you of any other lids you may have seen in Egypt? Well, it sure as fuck reminds me of the Serapeum. I mean, both of them are made of solid granite. Both of them have the exact same design, shape, everything. Both of them have no markings, even though some of the stone boxes at the Serapeum do have markings. Those came at a later date. When they were originally made, there was nothing on them. That's why most of them have nothing on them. Just like this tomb the sarcophagus has nothing on it. So who was Osiris? Basically, he was their god king. He gave humans civilization. Came down from the sky and taught humans civilization. Before Osiris, people were like animals. They would eat each other. And that was one of the things that he forbade was you're not allowed to eat people anymore. He taught us civilization. He taught us agriculture and community and social structure and kingship. So then comes his family. First you have Set, his brother, and then Isis, his sister, and also his wife. Now, I know that sounds kind of gross, But if you think that's bad, well, you should hear where the universe and the gods come from. This is absolutely true. I'm telling you the truth. The first god, Anu, was lonely and was sucked his own dick and busted a nut in his mouth and uh, gave birth to the universe. I'm not making this up. That's the fucking truth. You don't believe me? Go look it up. But that's the truth. Okay. And then there's other ways to say it too. Like he jacked off in his own hand, and it's fucking weird. But that's what they say. So I guess the whole brother and sister thing, I guess, was not too bad considering. But Set, his brother, is the black sheep in the family, and he kills Osiris and tricks him into getting into a trunk, and then throws him into a river, and where he dies. And then his wife Isis, she finds him, and Set gets upset and chops his body up and spreads it out to like the four corners of the earth. Well, she ends up traveling everywhere and collects all his body parts until she finds his penis. Then she impregnates herself and has a baby and puts all the pieces back together. And Osiris, comes back alive, but decides that he is going to stay and be the judge of the underworld. And so then you are left with their son Horus, who comes and kills Set for revenge for his father. And Set got his eyeball. That's where you get the eye of Horus from. So that's basically the story of these gods. But what's interesting is that's the mythology of it. But when you really look into the mythology, it's really, really strange that the Egyptians, when they talk about them, they don't discuss them as like it's one of their mythos or something. They discuss it like it happened yesterday. Like I saw it, like Osiris, he was their god or whatever, but he didn't rule everything. He had his own section of land that he ruled or whatever, and his own like little cult following, his own little kingdom. And so did Set and Isis and Horus, and they each had their own different territory and stuff. So it's just interesting how it could be like that. It just sounds like they were actually there. All right, so now that we got the stuff with Osiris out of the way, there's something else I want to talk about. But I'm gonna just tell you guys right now, this is totally like a spur of the moment kind of thing. It was just a theory like I had like developed today based on a dream I had last night, but I think there might be some validity to it. Maybe you guys could debate this with me. I'm sure I'm going to get a ton of haters about this one. Now, like when it comes to the pyramids and their constructions, one of the major issues is the time and all the work and everything. There was something, I had this crazy dream, and then when I woke up and I thought about it, it really made a lot of sense. And that is, what if the pyramids aren't fully constructed? What if it's not built out like we say it is? What if it is casing stones over one of their pyramid-shaped mountains or mounds? Now, that's what pyramid is. It literally, it means like, the mound of life or whatever. It was a mound that came out of the water, primordial chaos. The pyramid shape represents that mound of earth that came out. So, since it already has a relation to mountains or mounds of earth, what if that's the thing? What if they simply cut into an already existing pyramidal shaped hill or mound and then cased it with the stones? I think that would take up so much there's so much you could, have done if it was done that way. You already have, you already have the main core of it built. You don't have to worry about, too much structural damage or anything based on digging in, and the weight of it. The entire pyramid on itself wouldn't really be too bad. The stresses would be on the mound of living rock that's already there, the bedrock that's already attached. And see, they have plenty of these around Egypt. So what if that's what they did? They just cased an already existing pyramidal shaped mound. Then, I mean, it would explain a number of different things. And I started looking for evidence for this today. And immediately when I thought about it, the first thing I went and looked at was the pyramid from Abu Rawash. That was the one that immediately came to mind. It's one that Brian Forrester said exploded 12,000 years ago. I don't necessarily agree with, although I do agree with the theory of an ancient civilization existing, being, far more advanced back 12, 13,000 years ago. I do agree with that. But the pyramid exploding, what's interesting is that pyramid at Abu Rawash, you can see how it was literally cut into the living rock, into the bedrock here. Now, this is how, I think that they would make the grand galleries and chambers and stuff, is by cutting into the bedrock here of an already existing mound. And Abu Rawash is already on an existing mountain, by the way. But when you look at the sides here, I don't think, no one seems to really notice this. I never noticed or paid attention to it before, but it's living rock. It's the actual bedrock. Now, I can see there are stones cut out of it, but I can also see that it is straight up, there's 3 of them right there, but the rest right there, that's all bedrock. That's all part of the earth. So, I mean, does that make sense to you guys? What I'm trying to say, does he just cased a mountain? I don't know, but I think it's entirely possible. I think it's highly likely that they would do that. Looking at some of the other evidence, when you look at the Black Pyramid, already dilapidated and it's all falling apart, and a couple of the other smaller pyramids, you can see that they have a core, the outside in the mud brick has all turned back into sand, but the core is still just a solid chunk of mountain. There's no bricks or stones per se. It's just a giant mound of earth is what it looks like. But I mean, I really think that, and it would help explain why the quarry for the pyramids were not that big. I mean, they don't even look that big. They don't even look like they would contain the right amount of material to make the entire pyramids, but they did. That could also explain why the people, say that the pyramids could be completed in 20 years. Well, because if you were to take out, how 75% of the work, well then yeah, it's not going to take you that long. If you're only doing 1/3 of the work that that's expected, then yeah, you could get away with doing it in a lot less time. I think that they would already have a way. They wouldn't have to build a ramp when they could just carve out a ramp spiraling up and around it, and then they could bring up their bricks and stones and everything, the pyramidal, and they could literally build it from the top down. And for a little more evidence to help support this theory, let's take the Sphinx, for example. Now, people think that it's, built stone by stone, but it's not. It is just one solid piece. It has outer casing stone, but that's it. The whole thing is just made up of a natural earth mound. And they have these actually, it's pretty common in Egypt, these earthen mounds that have these protruding points sticking up. I think they call them lion's mounds or something. But they have them all over Egypt. And I mean, there's a bunch of crazy stuff around Egypt that a lot of people don't know about, like the Crystal Desert. They have the Blue Desert, the Red Desert, the Black Desert, the White Desert. I mean, they got a bunch of crazy stuff around. All right, so that's the theory. So, what do you guys think? What are your thoughts on it? Does this seem like it could be plausible, or what do you guys think? And, make sure you guys like and subscribe. And thank you for sitting through this whole fucking video. I appreciate it. You know, I love all my subscribers. I love you guys. Thank you so much. Alright, guys. UFO out. What's up, you guys? UFO Proof here. And today we're going to be discussing the Tomb of Osiris, the God King. Osiris, Lord of the Dead, the foremost of Westerners, he who is permanently benign and youthful, God of the afterlife. People call him by many different names, but the one thing we don't call him is real. Today, we consider him on the Nile to his tomb. The third day, he is mourned and his enemies are destroyed. The fourth day, prayers and vigils are held. The fifth day, he is resurrected. So what can we take from this? Well, I would think it would be the details. It seems awfully specific for a pure myth. But probably most interesting part of his tomb, why does he even have a tomb? No other gods have a tomb. Tell me, have you ever heard of the tomb of Ra? Or the tomb of Anubis? Maybe the tomb of Horus? No, of course not. Because these places cannot be explained through standard chronology of Egypt, they resort to the last weapon of defense, is a copy of his style. All pharaohs attempted to mimic his look, the crown, the beard, the crook and flail, and so on. The only thing they couldn't copy was his dark green skin. Retold is the story of Osiris. The first day, a fake battle takes place. Osiris is killed. The second day, the procession would take his body, him only a myth. But what did the ancient Egyptians consider him? The first pharaoh? From the first time, called Zeptepi, a time before Egypt existed, this god king descended from the stars and taught man the knowledge of civilization, and ruled over the humans that worshipped him. In fact, the entire Egyptian culture